Hello and welcome to today's podcast. Today we will wander to the life of one of the greatest lawyers ever to exist in the history of our glorious country. Today I'm joined by Nathaniel Raskin, and today we are doing our wonderful Black History Month segment about Thurgood Marshall. Nathaniel, why don't you get us started with some background information?
I would be delighted to. Thurgood Marshall was born on June 2nd, 1908, in Baltimore, Maryland. His father went by William Canfield Marshall, a railroad porter and a steward. Norma Williams Marshall, an elementary school teacher, was his mother. At the age of 6, he changed his name to Thurgood Marshall because back then they just allowed anybody to change their name. He decided to go into the practice of law and joined the all-black Lincoln University in 1930. After getting rejected by the University of Maryland Law School because he wasn't white, and then got a law degree at Howard University in 1933. Additionally, he was the prestige of Charles and Hamilton Houston, who encouraged Marshall and other law students to learn the law for social change. From there, he sparked a long legal career that ended him becoming a Supreme Court justice. One of the first cases Thurgood Marshall argued was Mary v. Pearson. He brought this in the Maryland Circuit Court, and the Circuit Court ruled that it was illegal for schools to deny any person on race. The case was appealed to the Maryland Circuit Appeals, and by a unanimous decision, the Court of Appeals ruled that nobody can be Bridge College solely due to their race. After this legal victory, he became a member of the NAACP and eventually became the head of the Legal Defense and Educational Fund.
Expanding on his legal career, Thurgood Marshall argued 32 cases before the Supreme Court, winning 29 of them. This makes his win rate 90.65%. Speaking of Supreme Court cases, one of them is Fisher v. Hearst in 1948. For context, the plaintiff, Ada Lois Sipple Hearst, applied for admission to the University of Oklahoma Law School in 1946. However, due to her race, she was denied. So, Thurgood Marshall filed suit on Sipple's behalf. However, the state wanted to delay the case, so they counter-arguing that they had plans to build a separate law school for black students. Therefore, they shouldn't be forced to accept any African-American students in the state's all-white law schools. The Oklahoma State Supreme Court disagreed and stated that until the separate law school for blacks was built, Fisher should be enrolled in the University of Oklahoma Law School to commence her studies, or no students of any race were to be enrolled in the law school. Next, there was Patton v. State of Mississippi, which is the case that took place in Lauderdale County, Mississippi. This time, a black man of the name of Eddie Patton was arrested and indicted by an all-white petit jury. He was convicted of a crime and was given the death sentence by means of an electric chair. Thurgood Marshall moved to repeal the sentence because there wasn't a single black man on the jury, even though there were blacks in the county who qualified for jury service. The population in Lauderdale County was 35% black. However, African Americans haven't been jurors for decades. Unfortunately, the trial court in the Mississippi State Supreme Court overruled Marshall's motion to repeal. Nevertheless, the Supreme Court then granted a writ of certiorari, which is a legal term that means a higher court orders a lower court to send up a record of a case for review. The verdict ended that Patton's right to the equal protection of the law had been violated because the state unintentionally and systematically excluded black from jury lists, boxes, and service. The court mentioned a number of cases bolstering its position, including Schroeder v. State of West Virginia, 1880, which I won't be covering, but you should totally check it out.
Another case is Brown v. Board of Education. Arguably, his most prominent case that he argued was this case, Brown v. Board of Education, which ruled that racial segregation of children in public schools was unconstitutional. In this case, a plaintiff named Oliver Brown filed a class action lawsuit against the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. In 1951, after his daughter, Linda Brown, was denied entry to Topeka's all-white elementary school in this lawsuit, Brown claimed that schools for black children weren't equal to the schools made for whites. That segregation violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. White states, no state can deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of its laws. The case was reviewed before the U.S. District Court of Kansas, which decided that public school segregation had a detrimental effect upon colored children and created a sense of inferiority, but still sustains that the separate but equal doctrine was okay. Brown's case and 4 other related cases to school segregation combined into one case under the name of Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka. At first, the justices were divided on how to rule school segregation, with Chief Justice Fred M. Bison holding the opinion that Plassey's verdict should stand. But in September 1953, before Brown v. Board of Education was to be heard, Vincent died, and President Dwight D. Eisenhower replaced him with Earl Warren, then Governor of California. Eventually, he managed to create a unanimous vote against school segregation.
Thurgood Marshall to be a justice on the Second Circuit of Appeals. In 1965, the president appointed Thurgood Marshall as his Solicitor General. In 1967, Thurgood Marshall was reviewed by the Senate Judiciary Committee and was approved 11-5. When he brought into the General Senate debate, he was debated for 6 hours on August 30th, 1967, and he was approved 69-11. He took 2 oaths and finally became a member in September 1967. He was the first non-white and first black Supreme Court justice.
Thurgood Marshall increased personal protections on the Supreme Court. One of the biggest examples of this is Roe v. Wade. In this case, the defendant argued that abortion was a constitutional right. Thurgood Marshall ruled with the majority that abortion was protected via the Constitution. He also had many other cases protecting civil rights that gave him the nickname Mr. Civil Rights. Later in his career, more and more of his liberal comrades were removed and replaced by a conservative majority. This made him write so many dissenting opinions, he is now also known as the Great Dissenter.
After serving 24 years on the court, he retired in 1991. 2 years later, Thurgood Marshall died. The Supreme Court wrote a special resolution that stated, inscribed above the front entrance to this court building are the words, "Equal justice under law." Surely no individual did more to make those words a reality than Thurgood Marshall. In conclusion, Thurgood Marshall had been a very influential person in the world of law and society. He has argued several paramount Supreme Court cases that has impacted our society significantly today. He later became one of the most liberal and pro-civil rights persons on the Supreme Court. I hope you, dear listeners, have had a wonderful time listening to our podcast. However, it is time to bring this to a close. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Farewell, travelers!